The rubber industry is an essential part of Singapore's story as a nation. Through the years, Singapore capitalized on its excellent infrastructural facilities and proximity to global key players, transforming to become the premier rubber market, not just in Asia, but for the rest of the world. During the late 1800s, the motor car that required rubber tires was invented and demand for rubber accelerated. Originally, rubber was sourced only from the wild trees found in the jungles on the other side of the world. For Singapore, her story started when British adventurer Henry Wickham took seeds of the Hevea rubber trees from Brazil to Kew Gardens in England, from where 22 seedlings eventually arrived in Singapore. 11 of these seedlings found their home at the Singapore Botanic Gardens in 1877, and as years passed, the number grew to 1,000 trees. From here, the gardens carried out extensive research to enhance its commercial advantage, productivity, and methods of extracting latex while advocating rubber as a plantation crop. When world coffee prices fell and demand for rubber increased, British investors saw its great potential. A vision that was mutual among the notable Chinese entrepreneurs who also cultivated rubber, one of whom was Tan Chay Yan, the grandson of Tan Tock Seng, who was the first person to cultivate rubber as a commercial crop. Soon after, local farming communities in Singapore and neighboring countries started planting rubber as well. Eventually, these small farmers would dominate the production of rubber in the years to come. When small farmers from neighboring Malay Peninsula and Indonesia had no means to process rubber and bring them to the market, Singapore Chinese entrepreneurs took on the roles of middlemen, packers, and exporters. A thriving industry soon emerged, becoming a key engine of industrial growth in early Singapore. During this period, the rubber tycoons and their factories provided employment to the influx of migrants, while supporting development of education facilities for the growing population of Singapore. Businesses in Singapore also began manufacturing and supplying equipment to rubber growers around the region. New industries materialized. Banking and insurance emerged. Shipping activities flourished, delivering rubber to rubber product manufacturers worldwide and setting the stage for Singapore's future in the global rubber market. The beauty of the Singapore River witnessed early trading activities. Back then, unprocessed rubber from neighboring islands arrived by boats. Warehouses lined both sides of the river where bidding and auctioning took place. Thus, the price discovery process for the region's traders and growers began to emerge. As trading activities became vibrant, alliances were forged. The Singapore Chamber of Commerce Rubber Association, composed of foreign traders, regulated auctions and trade. Meanwhile, the local and Chinese traders formed the Chinese Rubber Association, which is now known as the Rubber Trade Association of Singapore. The year was 1962, when both groups finally convened as the Rubber Association of Singapore, or RAS, to manage and regulate trade. Then, in 1967, the Singapore government converted the RAS into a statutory board, giving it the legal backing and enhancing its capability to take Singapore to the international arena. Through the RAS, Singapore advocated for an international body to develop contracts and trade understanding. Singapore actively participated in many international forums. One of these produced a green book for clear description of the various grades of visually graded rubber. The RAS also administered the regulation of futures trading. But up until the 90s, the system in place only allowed for trading via phone connections among sellers, brokers, and buyers. Fast forward to 1992. The RAS became the RAS Commodity Exchange, or better known as the RASCE. The processing and packing of rubber are now gone from Singapore. However, the market for buying and selling of rubber actively continued. The association pushed for a modern and more transparent futures trading, garnering the support of global tire manufacturers, trading firms and brokers. The old whispering system was gone, and trading is now done on screen. In 1994, exactly 20 years ago, the RASCE was renamed as the Singapore Commodity Exchange, or SICOM, a move that positioned itself to become the price discovery center for the world's rubber trade. Finally, in 2008, SGX acquired SICOM, moving its rubber futures contracts to an even more robust platform with the technical support of Nasdaq OMX and Mellanox and the participation of global banks and SGX.
That SICOM's prices, official prices, reflecting the true rubber transaction. This is why all the major consumers use it for long-term contract basis.
The SICOM is actually the current benchmark. It's a credible benchmark. SICOM has the governance, the credibility, the transparency for price formation. You have also very efficient possibilities for movement of rubber in Singapore, and which will continuously be improved.
The Singapore rubber trade story is an unfolding story of resiliency, objectivity, and the combined efforts of its rubber traders, governments, and supporting industries to make Singapore the center of choice for rubber trading. Asia is expected to unceasingly retain its position as the leading producer and consumer of natural rubber. And Singapore will continuously capitalize on its proximity to global key players, its structural facilities and good governance to endlessly transform and write her story as the premier rubber market of the world.